I want to start by asking you a simple question. Why do you do what you do? Not what you do, not how you do it, but why? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? Why do you show up to work? Why do you make the choices you make every single day? Because the truth is, far too many of us can answer the first two questions, but not the last. And that gap between what we do and why we do it is where fear takes root. We live in a society that worships results. Numbers, metrics, quarterly earnings, KPIs. We celebrate the victories without asking what was sacrificed to get them. Fear is a tool that is efficient. It drives short-term results. It makes people comply. But it does not inspire. It does not build loyalty. It does not create resilience. Fear gets results today, but it destroys trust tomorrow. Look around. Burnout is epidemic. Disconnection is everywhere. People are clocking in and clocking out, but their hearts are not in the work. Why? Because they don't feel safe. They don't feel valued. They are driven by fear, fear of losing their job, fear of failure, fear of being overlooked. And we tell ourselves that's just the way business works. That's just the way life is. But it doesn't have to be. Fear-based leadership has a hidden cost. It delivers short-term compliance, yes, but it erodes the very thing that makes organizations and societies strong, trust. When people are afraid, they do not innovate. They do not collaborate. They do not stay. They do what's expected and nothing more. They survive, but they do not thrive. And yet there is hope. There is a better way. There is a leadership that doesn't rely on intimidation or control. Leadership that begins with why, with purpose. Leadership that is human-centered, not power-centered. Leadership that serves, not dominates. When people know why they are doing something, when they feel that their efforts contribute to something bigger than themselves, discipline becomes natural. Creativity flourishes. Loyalty grows. People show up not because they have to, but because they want to. This is not abstract. It is biological. It is psychological. It is strategic. Humans are wired to work together, to cooperate, to trust. Trust is the currency of any relationship, team, or society. And trust is built when leaders demonstrate empathy, courage, and integrity, not fear. When leaders protect people, not just profits. When leaders think long-term, not short-term. Systems built on fear are fragile. Systems built on trust are resilient. Systems built on service are enduring. And every one of us has the responsibility to ask, am I building a system that serves people? Or am I building one that exploits them? Am I creating loyalty? Or am I extracting compliance? Am I leading with fear? Or am I leading with purpose? The choice is yours. Not tomorrow, not next quarter, not when it's convenient. The choice is here, today. Rediscover your why. Lead with empathy, with courage, with integrity. Build organizations, teams, and communities where people feel safe, valued, and inspired to contribute. Think long-term. Serve something bigger than yourself. And when you do, you will create a loyalty that fear could never buy, a commitment that no short-term gain could ever replicate. Because fear might get results, but it will never get hearts. It will never get minds. It will never get souls. Only purpose does that. Only trust does that. Only love for the work and for each other does that. So go, lead, serve, inspire, commit to something bigger than yourself, and watch what happens when people choose to follow you, not because they have to, but because they want to. Fear is a powerful motivator. It grabs our attention, it commands action, and it can push people to perform in ways they might not otherwise. When a deadline is looming, when a boss is watching, when consequences are immediate and severe, fear has a way of sharpening focus and extracting results. In that moment, it works. Fear can produce compliance. People do what they are told, follow instructions, meet quotas, and check boxes because they are afraid of the consequences of not doing so. It is efficient in the short term. It generates outcomes. It creates the illusion that systems, teams, and organizations are functioning well. But the effectiveness of fear is an illusion. While it may deliver results today, it carries a hidden cost that grows over time, a cost that is rarely measured but always paid. When fear becomes the primary tool for driving behavior, it undermines trust. Trust is not given lightly, and it is not something that can be coerced. Trust is built in moments of consistency, care, transparency, and support. When people are operating under fear, they do not experience those moments. They experience pressure, uncertainty, and the constant question of whether they are safe. Fear teaches people to protect themselves first, to prioritize personal survival over collaboration or shared purpose. It erodes the sense of safety that is necessary for trust to develop. Without trust, teams cannot operate effectively. Individuals may follow instructions, but they do not engage fully. They do not take risks. They do not innovate. They do not act in the interest of the collective. Trust is the currency of collaboration. And when fear dominates, that currency is depleted. Loyalty is another casualty of fear-based systems. Loyalty is deeper than compliance. It is emotional, relational, and rooted in a sense of belonging and alignment. When people feel that they are valued, respected, and protected, they develop loyalty. When they are treated as expendable, measured solely by their output or their ability to meet imposed standards, loyalty vanishes. Fear produces temporary adherence, but it cannot cultivate the kind of commitment that sustains long-term relationships, whether in the workplace, in families, or in communities. People may stay because they feel they have no choice, but their hearts, minds are elsewhere. They are disengaged, waiting for the opportunity to leave, waiting for the moment they can reclaim autonomy and find meaning outside the environment that drives them with fear. Fear also weakens long-term resilience. Resilience is the ability to adapt, to recover from setbacks, to learn, and to grow. Resilient individuals and organizations can weather uncertainty, navigate complexity, and emerge stronger from challenges. Fear undermines resilience because it narrows focus to immediate threats and short-term survival. It discourages experimentation and problem solving because mistakes are punished rather than treated as learning opportunities. It fosters avoidance rather than courage. When fear is the norm, people expend their energy avoiding failure instead of pursuing progress. Over time, this diminishes collective confidence, diminishes morale, and reduces the capacity of the organization to recover from crisis or adapt to change. The systems and people that rely on fear are fragile, brittle, and vulnerable because they have never been allowed to develop the deeper muscles of resilience. Moreover, fear has a cascading effect on culture. Culture is not built by rules or processes alone. It is built by the interactions, behaviors, and shared experiences of the people within an organization or community. When fear dominates, culture becomes transactional, superficial, and mistrustful. People hide information, withhold feedback, and avoid accountability because they are protecting themselves from consequences. Communication breaks down, collaboration stalls, and creativity is stifled. What emerges is a culture of compliance, not a culture of commitment. A culture that operates on fear may appear orderly, efficient, and disciplined, but it is brittle and short-lived. It lacks the adaptability, empathy, and cohesion required to thrive in the long run. Fear also erodes purpose. People are motivated not only by directives, but by meaning. When fear drives behavior, the focus shifts from why the work matters to how to avoid negative outcomes. Purpose is drowned out by anxiety. Motivation becomes extrinsic rather than intrinsic, tied to reward or punishment rather than engagement and passion. In such an environment, even high-performing individuals can burn out, disengage, or become cynical. They perform tasks but lose sight of why those tasks matter, why their work matters, and why they are part of something larger than themselves. Fear may drive compliance, but it kills inspiration, stifles growth, and reduces the capacity for meaningful contribution. Finally, the leaders who rely on fear pay a cost as well. Leadership is not merely about directing others. It is about creating environments where people can thrive, trust, and commit. Leaders who use fear as their primary tool may see immediate results, but they fail to build loyalty, trust, and long-term strength. Their influence is transactional, fragile, and ultimately unsustainable. People follow out of necessity, not conviction, and when the pressure is lifted, they leave, disengage, or quietly undermine the very systems they once complied with. Fear creates an illusion of control, but it cannot sustain true leadership. Fear may produce results in the short term, but the deeper consequences are profound. It erodes trust, undermines loyalty, diminishes resilience, and destroys culture. It shifts motivation from purpose to survival and leaves individuals, teams, and organizations weaker over time. True strength, enduring success, and meaningful progress come not from fear, but from trust, empathy, service, and purpose. People naturally seek meaning in the work they do. From the earliest moments of our lives, we are driven not only by survival, but by curiosity, by purpose, by the desire to understand the impact of our actions. This need for understanding does not vanish as we grow older. In fact, it becomes more critical in environments where the complexity of work increases, the stakes are higher, and the consequences of our actions ripple across organizations, communities, and society. When people are told what to do without understanding why they are doing it, they may follow instructions, complete tasks, and even meet goals, but the deeper engagement, the sense of ownership, and the creative energy that fuel excellence remain dormant. Doing something without knowing why it matters creates a disconnection between the action and the meaning it is meant to serve, and it leaves individuals performing in a state of compliance rather than contribution. Understanding the why of our work is fundamentally tied to motivation. Motivation comes in many forms, but the most enduring and resilient kind is intrinsic motivation, the drive to act, because it aligns with our values, our sense of purpose, and our belief that our efforts contribute to something meaningful. When people understand the purpose behind their work, they see themselves as part of a larger story. They do not measure success solely by completion or output. They measure it by impact, by contribution, by progress toward a shared vision. This understanding fuels creativity, problem solving, and innovation because people are no longer simply executing tasks. They are thinking critically, anticipating challenges, and seeking ways to improve the outcomes they care about. They take initiative not because they are told to, but because they feel ownership of the purpose and responsibility for the results. When people know the why, they also develop resilience. Work is never linear, and challenges are inevitable. Deadlines are missed, obstacles arise, and setbacks occur. In environments where the what dominates and the why is absent, these moments often lead to frustration, disengagement, or resignation. People see only the task, and when the task becomes difficult, their commitment wanes. In contrast, when the why is clear, setbacks are contextualized as part of a meaningful journey. People are able to adapt, persevere, and maintain focus on the bigger picture. Understanding why provides the lens through which challenges are interpreted, and it transforms difficulty from a source of discouragement into an opportunity for growth, learning, and contribution. Leadership plays a central role in conveying why. Leaders who articulate a compelling purpose create alignment across individuals, teams, and organizations. They connect day-to-day activities to a larger mission, a greater cause, or a set of shared values. This connection is not superficial, it is tangible and actionable. It allows people to see how their contributions matter, how their work intersects with the efforts of others, and how their efforts help achieve outcomes that extend beyond themselves. Leaders who neglect to communicate the why rely on compliance, processes, and control. Leaders who emphasize the why cultivate commitment, creativity, and engagement. They create environments where people are empowered to act thoughtfully, to take risks responsibly, and to innovate in ways that advance collective goals. The importance of why is also reflected in the design of systems and structures. Policies, workflows, and metrics are often built to track the outputs, the deliverables, the checklists. Yet without integrating the why into these systems, organizations inadvertently encourage mechanical action without thought or reflection. Employees may meet numerical targets but fail to contribute to meaningful outcomes. They may follow procedures but miss opportunities to improve, innovate, or collaborate. Systems that emphasize purpose alongside performance create environments in which people can align their personal motivation with organizational objectives. They bridge the gap between individual effort and collective impact, allowing people to perform at higher levels, not because they are monitored, but because they are inspired. Understanding why also strengthens relationships and culture. When individuals recognize that their actions are part of something larger, they feel more connected to colleagues, to leaders, and to the organization itself. This connection fosters trust, collaboration, and loyalty. People are less likely to withhold effort, resources, or ideas because they see themselves as integral to a shared mission. They support one another, share knowledge, and work collectively to overcome obstacles. Conversely, when the why is absent, relationships weaken, engagement drops, and people focus narrowly on self-preservation or minimal compliance. Culture, in this sense, is a reflection of the clarity of purpose that leader and systems provide. Finally, knowing the why drives long-term impact. Short-term performance can be achieved without purpose, but sustainable success, meaningful innovation, and enduring satisfaction cannot. Individuals and organizations that operate with a clear why are equipped to think strategically, invest in growth, and adapt to changing circumstances. They do not chase metrics alone. They cultivate people, build relationships, and invest in systems that endure. They recognize that true achievement is measured not only by what is accomplished, but by the quality of effort, the alignment of purpose, and the capacity to leave a lasting positive mark on others and on the world. When people understand why they are doing something, they transform work from a series of tasks into a meaningful journey. They act with intention rather than reaction, with commitment rather than compliance, and with energy that stems from alignment rather than obligation. They are motivated not only to succeed, but to contribute, to innovate, and to endure. They are empowered to see themselves as creators of outcomes, collaborators in a shared mission, and stewards of purpose. And it is in this understanding that true performance, engagement, and fulfillment are realized. Burnout and disengagement have become almost commonplace in modern workplaces. People often speak of exhaustion, lack of motivation, and emotional depletion as if they are personal failings, as if the individual is somehow weak or lacking resilience. The prevailing narrative suggests that those who burn out simply cannot cope, that they need to work harder, be more disciplined, or manage their time better. Yet this perspective misses a fundamental truth. Burnout and disengagement are not problems of individual weakness. They are symptoms of systems built on fear, control, and short-term results. They are the inevitable consequences of environments that demand compliance while offering little safety, meaning, or trust. Fear-based systems operate a fundamental principle. Performance is measured by immediate output rather than long-term contribution. They emphasize control over collaboration, surveillance over trust, and consequences over purpose. In such systems, individuals are constantly pushed to meet metrics, deadlines, or expectations that may be arbitrary, misaligned, or disconnected from meaningful outcomes. They are monitored, judged, and evaluated in ways that reinforce anxiety rather than engagement. This environment creates a constant state of hypervigilance. People do not rest, they do not pause to reflect or innovate. Every decision, every action, every minute is under scrutiny. Over time, the stress and tension accumulate, and the individual begins to experience emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion. Burnout emerges not because the person is incapable, but because the system has demanded more than is humanly sustainable without offering support, clarity, or purpose. Disengagement follows a similar trajectory. When people are subjected to fear-based management, they may continue to meet expectation superficially, but their hearts and minds withdraw from the work. Engagement is rooted in connection, meaning, and contribution. People engage when they feel that what they do matters, that they are trusted, that they are valued, and that their efforts contribute to something larger than themselves. When fear dominates, none of these conditions exist. Tasks become obligations rather than opportunities, meetings become exercises in compliance rather than collaboration, and performance becomes transactional rather than purposeful. Individuals disengage not because they are lazy or unmotivated, but because the environment systematically undermines the factors that generate engagement. They conserve energy, detach emotionally, and protect themselves from a system that views them primarily as instruments for short-term results. The structural design of fear-based systems also amplifies burnout and disengagement. Organizations that emphasize metrics over people create environments where individuals feel constant pressure to perform without adequate resources, feedback, or support. Workloads are often unreasonable, roles are poorly defined, and expectations shift unpredictably. Employees are told to innovate but punished for mistakes, to collaborate but discouraged from questioning authority, to lead but constrained by rigid hierarchies. This contradiction produces confusion, frustration, and a sense of helplessness. When individuals recognize that no matter how much effort they invest, they remain vulnerable to criticism or failure, motivation erodes and disengagement intensifies. The system, rather than the individual, is failing to provide the conditions necessary for sustained engagement and well-being. Fear-based cultures also erode trust, and trust is central to engagement and resilience. When people are afraid of making mistakes, afraid of losing their jobs, afraid of being judged, they cannot be fully present. They do not take initiative, share ideas, or support colleagues. They operate in silos, withholding knowledge and resources to protect themselves. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild, and the absence of trust accelerates disengagement and emotional exhaustion. The workplace becomes a transactional environment where compliance is rewarded, creativity is suppressed, and intrinsic motivation is suffocated. Burnout is inevitable because human beings are not designed to function optimally in conditions of constant fear, and disengagement is predictable because connection and purpose are absent. It is also important to recognize that fear-based systems disproportionately affect individuals over time. The cumulative impact of microstressors, lack of recognition, and chronic pressure leads to a gradual erosion of well-being. Individuals may initially cope by working longer hours, multitasking, or suppressing emotional needs, but these coping strategies are temporary. Without structural change, the accumulation of stressors leads to exhaustion, cynicism, and withdrawal. The system creates the conditions for burnout, yet often interprets the consequences as personal failure. Employees are blamed for not being resilient enough, for not managing stress, or for not staying engaged, further reinforcing a cycle of guilt, shame, and disengagement. In addition, fear-based systems undermine meaning and purpose, which are critical antidotes to burnout and disengagement. People sustain effort when they feel that their work has impact and significance. They remain committed when they believe their contributions matter to others and to the larger mission. When fear dominates, purpose is obscured or dismissed. Tasks are reduced to numbers, performance is evaluated in isolation from values, and the human element is ignored. Individuals become alienated from the work itself, from colleagues, and from the organization. The resulting disengagement is not a reflection of laziness or incapacity. It is the rational response of a human being to an environment that fails to provide psychological safety, clarity, or connection. Burnout and disengagement are therefore systemic issues. They are the outcomes of leadership that prioritizes control over trust, short-term results over long-term health, and fear over purpose. They are signals that the environment is unsustainable, that the system is failing the people within it. Addressing these issues requires more than individual effort. It requires rethinking the design of work, the approach to leadership, and the culture of organization. It demands environments where people are trusted, where purpose is clear, where mistakes are treated as learning opportunities, and where well-being is integral to performance. Only when the system shifts from fear to trust, from control to service, and from metrics to meaning will burnout and disengagement diminish and individuals can thrive. Leadership is not about issuing commands, asserting authority, or maintaining control. Leadership is about service. True leadership is measured not by the power one holds, but by the impact one has on the people and systems one serves. It is the commitment to make others better, to protect their well-being, to guide them toward purpose, and to create conditions in which they can thrive. When leaders embrace service as their guiding principle, they shift the focus from self-interest to collective interest, from short-term gains to long-term growth, and from fear-based compliance to trust-based loyalty. Leadership grounded in service is inherently human-centered, recognizing that people are not cogs in a machine, but sentient, creative, and relational beings whose engagement, resilience, and commitment are essential to enduring success. Empathy is central to service-oriented leadership. Empathy is not merely a soft skill or an act of sympathy. It is the ability to understand the experiences, motivations, and challenges of others, to see the world from their perspective, and to respond in ways that support their growth and well-being. When leaders practice empathy, they cultivate environments where people feel seen, heard, and valued. They create trust, which is the foundation of loyalty. Employees who experience empathy are more likely to engage fully, to invest their energy, and to collaborate effectively. Empathy allows leaders to anticipate challenges before they escalate, to recognize the human cost of decisions, and to make choices that balance organizational objectives with the needs of individuals. Transforms leadership from a position of authority into a role of stewardship. Integrity is another cornerstone of service-based leadership. Integrity is demonstrated through consistency between words and actions, through honesty, transparency, and ethical behavior. Leaders with integrity are predictable in the best sense. People know what they stand for, they know that commitments will be honored, and they know that values guide decision-making. This consistency builds trust because people feel secure in their interactions and in the systems the leader oversees. Integrity also fosters accountability. Leaders who act with integrity hold themselves to the same standards they expect from others, modeling behavior that strengthens culture and reinforces a sense of fairness. When integrity is present, people are more likely to commit their loyalty voluntarily because they respect and believe in the leader, not because they are compelled by fear, hierarchy, or authority. Long-term thinking completes the triad of service-based leadership. It is easy to focus on immediate results, quarterly metrics, or short-term wins, but leadership is measured over time by the endurance of relationships, systems, and culture. Leaders who think long-term prioritize sustainability development and the future impact of their decisions. They invest in people, creating opportunities for growth, skill development, and empowerment. They build structures and processes that anticipate change, foster innovation, and withstand uncertainty. Long-term thinking demonstrates that leaders are committed not only to immediate outcomes, but to the enduring success of the individuals and communities they serve. It signals that leadership is about stewardship rather than exploitation, about leaving systems stronger than they were found, and about cultivating loyalty that endures beyond the next project or performance review. Service-oriented leadership, rooted in empathy, integrity, and long-term thinking, transforms the dynamics of an organization. It shifts relationships from transactional to relational, from compliance-driven to commitment-driven. People do not merely follow because they are obligated to. They follow because they are inspired, because they trust, and because they believe in the purpose and values that guide the leader. Loyalty in this context is not coerced. It is earned, nurtured, and sustained through consistent demonstration of care, ethical action, and foresight. It is a type of loyalty that encourages discretionary effort, fosters innovation, and strengthens collective resilience. It is a loyalty that persists even in times of challenge, uncertainty, or pressure because it is built on a foundation of respect, trust, and shared purpose. Furthermore, leadership as service addresses systemic challenges such as burnout, disengagement, and mistrust. When leaders prioritize empathy, they recognize and mitigate the human costs of excessive pressure, unrealistic expectations, and fear-based systems. When leaders operate with integrity, they reduce cynicism, inconsistency, and the erosion of morale. When leaders think long-term, they create sustainable practices, nurture talent, and build cultures where people can invest themselves fully without fear of exploitation or short-term consequences. The combination of these principles produces organizations and communities that are resilient, adaptable, and high-functioning even in the face of complexity and change. Service-based leadership also expands the scope of influence beyond immediate teams or organizations. Leaders who serve inspire others to lead. In the same way, creating a ripple effect of empathy, integrity, and foresight across networks, industries, and society. They redefine success not as accumulation of power or wealth, but as the capacity to enable others to flourish. They build trust at scale because people recognize that leadership can be exercised responsibly, ethically, and humanely. This approach cultivates loyalty not only to a person, but to a mission, to shared values, and to a system designed to uplift rather than exploit. In embracing service as the essence of leadership, leaders shift the focus from personal authority to collective responsibility, from fear to trust, and from short-term wins to long-term impact. Empathy ensures that people are valued. Integrity ensures that promises are kept. And long-term thinking ensures that investments in people and systems endure. Together, these principles create conditions where loyalty is earned, not demanded, where engagement is cultivated, not coerced, and where organizations thrive not despite challenges, but because of the human-centered leadership at their core. Purpose and trust are the foundations of human motivation, the pillars on which engagement, loyalty, and commitment are built. They are forces that cannot be replicated by fear, coercion, or authority, no matter how sophisticated the systems or how precise the incentives. Fear can make people act. It can make them comply. It can make them perform tasks to avoid negative consequences, but fear cannot inspire genuine commitment. Fear can drive behavior temporarily, but it leaves people disengaged, disconnected, and ultimately ready to abandon the very work or organization they were pressured to support. Purpose and trust, in contrast, cultivate the conditions in which people choose to follow, contribute, and innovate, not because they must, but because they want to. When leaders and organizations operate with purpose and trust at their core, they create environments where engagement is voluntary, sustainable, and deeply human. Purpose is the why behind what we do. It answers the fundamental question that every individual, whether consciously or unconsciously, asks, why does my work matter? Purpose gives context to tasks and meaning to effort. It transforms repetitive or challenging work from a series of obligations into a contribution towards something larger than oneself. When people understand purpose, they see themselves as part of a story greater than their immediate role or individual performance. They recognize that their actions have impact, that their work matters to others, and that their energy contributes to a collective goal. This awareness fuels intrinsic motivation, which is more powerful and enduring than any external pressure or reward. It creates alignment because people can see how their personal values intersect with the mission of the organization, the community, or the movement they are part of. Purpose clarifies priorities, informs decision-making, and gives resilience when obstacles arise, because individuals understand that setbacks are part of a meaningful journey rather than arbitrary failures. Trust is the soil in which the seeds of purpose take root. Without trust, purpose cannot flourish, because people will hesitate to commit when they feel unsafe, undervalued, or uncertain about the intentions of those who lead them. Trust is cultivated through consistent behavior, integrity, transparency, and empathy. It requires that leaders demonstrate reliability, protect those in their care, and act in alignment with stated values. When people trust their leaders and their teams, they are willing to invest energy, take initiative, and accept responsibility, even in the face of risk or uncertainty, Trust allows people to engage fully, to communicate openly, and to collaborate authentically. It transforms an environment from transactional to relational, from compliance-driven to commitment-driven, and from fear-based to human-centered. When purpose and trust operate together, they create a powerful synergy. Purpose gives people a reason to act, a vision to follow, and a mission worth pursuing. Trust gives them the confidence that they can act without fear of exploitation, that their efforts are recognized, and that their well-being matters. Together, they inspire commitment that is voluntary, resilient, and enduring. Individuals are not merely completing tasks or meeting expectations. They are contributing to a shared mission, collaborating with confidence, and taking ownership of outcomes. They innovate, solve problems, and persist in ways that fear alone can never elicit. Where fear motivates avoidance, purpose and trust motivate engagement. Where fear generates short-term compliance, purpose and trust generate long-term loyalty. In organizations, communities, and society, the presence of purpose and trust transforms culture. Teams become cohesive, resilient, and aligned. People communicate openly, share knowledge, and support one another because they are invested in shared goals and confident in the integrity of those around them. Mistakes are treated as learning opportunities rather than triggers for punishment, which fosters creativity and experimentation. Leaders and colleagues alike act as stewards of the mission and the people, rather than as enforcers of rules or metrics. This cultural shift has profound implications for performance, innovation, and sustainability. Systems that rely on fear eventually fracture as people disengage, resist, or leave. Systems rooted in purpose and trust endure, adapt, and thrive because the individuals within them are fully committed to shared objectives. Purpose and trust also empower leadership in ways that fear cannot. Leaders who operate through fear may command attention, compliance, or obedience, but they do not inspire devotion, initiative, or loyalty. Fear-based influence is fragile. It collapses when scrutiny, challenge, or pressure increases because it depends on external control rather than internal alignment. Leaders who lead with purpose and trust, however, generate voluntary followership. People commit because they believe in the mission, because they trust the leader, and because they feel secure and valued. Leadership becomes a shared responsibility, a collaboration, and a relationship built on mutual respect and alignment of values. Individuals also benefit personally from environments grounded in purpose and trust. They experience engagement rather than burnout, fulfillment rather than disconnection, and clarity rather than confusion. They are motivated by meaning, energized by contribution, and supported by relationships. They are willing to take initiative, to innovate, and to invest discretionary effort because they understand that their efforts matter and that they can act without fear of being undermined or exploited. Ultimately, purpose and trust are the forces that sustain human effort over time. They create environments where people are inspired to contribute, to collaborate, and to lead. They generate loyalty that cannot be bought, compliance that does not require coercion, and engagement that persists through challenges. Fear may produce immediate results, but only purpose and trust produce commitment, resilience, and enduring impact. When leaders lead with purpose and trust, people follow willingly, passionately, and persistently because they are aligned not only with the goals of the organization, but with the values, integrity, and vision of those guiding them. And it is in this alignment that true leadership, engagement, and human potential are realized. In the end, leadership is not about control. It is not about fear, authority, or short-term results. Leadership is about service to people, to purpose, and to something larger than oneself. Fear may get immediate results, but it erodes trust, destroys loyalty, and leaves systems fragile. Purpose gives direction. Trust creates safety. And together they inspire commitment that no threat or command ever could. Empathy, integrity, and long-term thinking are not optional. They are the foundations of enduring impact. When we lead with these principles, we build cultures where people feel valued, where creativity thrives, and where resilience becomes a natural outcome. The choice is ours. We can continue to chase metrics and compliance, producing results that are empty and temporary. Or we can choose to lead differently, to rediscover our why, to invest in people, and to create systems that serve rather than exploit. We can build loyalty that is earned, not coerced, and commitment that lasts because it is voluntary and deeply human. When purpose and trust guide our actions, when service defines our leadership, the people around us will follow not because they have to, but because they want to. It is time to embrace the responsibility of leadership, to think long-term, to act with courage and empathy, and to serve something bigger than ourselves. It is time to create workplaces, communities, and organizations where fear no longer drives behavior, where trust empowers action, and where purpose inspires every choice. Lead with purpose. Lead with trust. Lead with service. And together, we will build systems, relationships, and cultures capable of enduring impact, loyalty, and fulfillment that fear could never achieve.